I wanted to be in student-facing work. I've done student-facing work my entire life. I was an avid student, an Upward Bound alum. I was EOP. I worked for EOP as a peer advising counselor. You know, and I loved working with and for students. You know, it was what I enjoyed doing. And I went to grad school, and to be honest with y'all, it was like a combination of, you know, mi comunidad pushing me to like continue the job process, which was hard, opportunity and preparation, and honestly unemployment, because unemployment's expensive. So I was going through the job process. I ventured out into policy programs and not just student-facing work in California and on the West Coast, and I kind of expanded to different programs all across the nation. And I didn't intend to do policy, but then I found an organization where I'm able to take all these experiences that I had with student-facing work and have it really tailor policy for that population rather than the other way around. So again, I kind of landed into it by accident almost, and almost by need. But although I miss students, like I don't regret the decision, because I've been learning. Every day is a new chapter. Every day I'm learning something new, and I get to push the organization to constantly bring in the voices of students and the voices of those who the policies are impacting, which has been an interesting conversation to have.
Thank you so much for those responses. Our next question has to do, we have a mixture of folks. So we have some folks that are interested in pursuing graduate school right after their undergraduate experience here at UC Davis. We have other fellows that are interested in working in the field for a year or 2 years before returning back to a graduate program. And then we have other folks that are still on the fence whether or not they'll pursue a career in higher education, but nonetheless, they still want to work with students or help that pipeline. So our next question is, what have you been up to since your time with the UC Davis NUFP program? And we'll turn it over to Jaime first this time.
So I was a NUFP fellow in 2016, and then I graduated in 2016. I also wanted to pursue graduate school, but that's mainly because, one, I saw the Latinx educational pipeline, and I was like, damn, those numbers fucking suck. So I wanted to, you know, counter that at some level, just me being stubborn. Well, at the same time, I have the privilege of being a Gates Scholar, which would help me pay for the master's program and potentially a doctoral program. But I knew I needed to recover after undergrad. Undergrad was a lot for me, holistically, like spiritually, psychologically, emotionally, just a lot of different things. So I knew I needed a break, but I knew I wanted to still be, you know, giving back to students and working with communities. So I applied for a fellowship as a college advisor through a Destination College Advisor organization through UC Berkeley. Christy actually helped me connect with her cousin, who was an advisor at the time. And she was super helpful in helping me with that application process. And luckily I was able to get a position in Solano, specifically in Vacaville, so I was still able to stay in Davis. And that honestly was amazing, because I was still working with first-gen low-income Black and Latinx students within the Vacaville area, specifically at Will Seawood High. And at the same time recovering from undergrad, I wasn't getting paid a lot, but I was getting paid enough, so I was able to like help my folks and save a little bit of money. And at the same time, refine what I was thinking of doing for like a master's program. You know, whether I wanted to do administration, whether it was student affairs, whether it was policy. And that kind of really gave me more experience to try to figure out, or really see the same inequities that I experienced when I was going through school. So that helped me get ahead in the sense of experience. And then the program was also very supportive of people applying to grad school. So our director actually wanted us to apply to grad school. So we did have support in that sense. And then from there, I applied to programs. I ended up deciding to go to Harvard for my master's program, which was like 9 months of just drinking out of a very privileged fire hose all the time. And then I graduated in May. I was on the job search from May until about September, October, and then I decided to accept a job at the Education Trust, and this is kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, thank you so much. And now turning it over to B. Same question. What have you been up to since your time with the UC Davis NUF program?
Cool. Thank you. And it's good to see you, Jaime, too. We went to school together and we're in some spaces together. So what's up? Let's see. I was in the NUF program in 2017 and I graduated that year as well. Honestly, it's been kind of a roller coaster for me. I think job searching was really difficult in a lot of ways, emotionally taxing and very vulnerable work, especially applying as someone who doesn't use the same name as their legal name and use it and is trans. So that was really hard, I think. So I graduating Davis, I knew that going back to my parents to live with my parents wasn't really an option for me. So right away, the hustle began. I'm really grateful for some of the mentors that I met in the NUF program for sure, because I knew nothing about what it meant to like apply as like a professional trying to pursue higher education. I didn't really know what that meant. And I learned so much along the process, even more so with my own experience. But pretty much honestly, my first job out of undergrad was at Target in retail, and I did Lyft. And meanwhile that was happening, I was also trying to apply to different positions that were open in the community college system. So I think along the ways I definitely learned the community college is a different kind of network to tackle. And I think I went in kind of like naive to that a little bit, which I think helped because, I came in like with that, a lot of that, without a lot of that insecurity, I guess, that comes with not really knowing anyone. But I gave it a shot in the first, I graduated in June 2017. I got my first job at the community college district in Sacramento. I want to say it was like August of 2018. So it took a while. And my first job entering the community college was a part-time job too. So it's what they call a temporary job. So I learned a whole lot in the process because I think I struggled a lot with especially going into the community college district, I struggled a lot with the internalized like transphobia, I think, to where I wasn't comfortable like coming out right away when I did interviews. I debated for a long time what to put on my resume, whether or not I should use my pronouns, whether or not I should use my name, because I just needed a job at that point. So I was applying to all kinds of things, administrative assistant, clerical positions. So the work wasn't necessarily like what we call equity work. So I kind of struggled. And I think the interviews, I feel like I got a lot of interviews like at a certain point, but it was always kind of difficult because I had to face again that question. Do I come out? Do I say my pronouns? Do I use this name? Like, how am I going to just like drop this? And like, you have people who've never heard of pronouns ever in their life. And they've maybe worked at the community college for more than 20 years, So it was like they had a lot of power, but they didn't. So I kind of had to like navigate how I was going to be read in that situation. And so I started working at Sacramento City College, which I absolutely loved. I loved connecting with students. I think I was reminded why I really loved to be in higher education, and that was to like help people. I'm someone I can get stuck like a whole day trying to help like one person's situation, and I feel good about it. So I definitely enjoyed that work. I got hired as in student leadership and development at Sacramento City College. So I worked a lot with clubs, with student leaders, with people who were in student senate. And it was overall really rewarding position. And it kind of led me to my next position, which is now at American River College in the Center for Leadership and Development. And it's been a roller coaster. And I think I felt so much more confident in interviewing for this position because the dean of that department is queer. And so it made a huge difference. I was like, hell yeah, like this person worked at, like, you know, like it's kind of sad, but like, you know, I felt like it was sad because I was like, why are the only people that I feel like see me are people from 4 years? Like it was, I mean, it wasn't like that all the way through. Like, you know, I had students who were like really like, you know, dope and, you know, were really open to learning, would even call out like their older supervisors for like misgendering me. So it was really dope path overall. But yeah, I felt a lot more confident in being myself when I interviewed with this person who was queer. And it just goes to show, I think, too, the importance of like visibility in those spaces. And yeah, so overall, right now I supervise 16 students. And when I first started, it was 19. So it's been a whirlwind because at Sac City, I think I helped supervise like 2 or 3 students. So working with my team has been really rewarding and challenging. I've learned so much about myself. But yeah, sorry, that was a long answer.
That's exactly what we want to hear, B. You're kind of answering our next question, but I want to give you a little bit of opportunity to maybe expand a little bit on some of the answers that you've already provided. So it sounds like from your story in Jaime's, there's a lot of twists and turns, right? And so what do you feel like you really learned from about yourself and about the job searching process when you were job searching? Is there anything that you could share with the fellows in terms of helpful tips or any pieces of advice about job searching?
Yeah, oh my God, yes. Let's see. I will start with, okay, so definitely in the short time that I've been at the community college, I realized how fast things are changing. Like when I first started working there, it was before there was a Pride Center at our district, and our district has 4 schools, community colleges. And so there was nothing about like pronouns or gender or anything remotely queer or anything in this whole system. And so as soon as we launched our first Pride Center, which was at ARC, we saw so many things begin to change. Like even adding pronouns to business cards wasn't an option, and it was kind of something we had to fight for. So I think overall what I've learned from that is like, it's kind of worth being your authentic self. I faced so when I first started at Sacramento City College, I was actually going by my dead name, and I think the only thing I was probably out about are my pronouns. And so I honestly really regretted that decision. I wish that I had kind of like the confidence to like go in as the name that I wanted to, because when I finally did do that step, obviously people were really supportive. But I realized like a lot of the fear was like internal. So I think that's definitely one piece of advice is like your authentic self is like worth it. Like definitely there will always be someone who's like looking for like someone like you. So I think affirming that is important. And then another thing is like, don't be afraid to ask for help. I think people are under the assumption that you should know what it's like to apply to a job, that you should know what to put on the application and what to say at an interview. But it's honestly really, there's like a lot of inside tips that you don't really know like are a thing until you start asking. Like things are actually like, no, there actually is a good answer for some of these questions. There actually is like a way to talk about equity that people want to see in an interview and not just, you know, so little things like that. I think I would say, don't be afraid to ask for help, ask your mentors for interview tips. Yeah. And then let's see, definitely, definitely do your research. I feel like I've done interviews where I haven't done enough research about the school, about the folks that go there, about the work that the department specifically does. So that's definitely one. And then let's see. Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, absolutely. You're completely answering. It's just if you have any other tips, anything else you felt like you learned while job searching, it's really helpful, I think, to hear a little bit about the, higher ed has its own language, its own expectations, right? So I love that you were able to use your mentors and, like you said, not be afraid to ask questions and do research and figure out what those expectations, those unspoken expectations are. So anything else you want to share around job searching? If not, we'll pass it over to Jaime.
Thank you. Yeah, that's I think that's pretty much all I had to give. I feel like there was one, but I forgot. Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, I can come back.
Jaime, same question. So what did you end up learning while you were job searching, and what were some of the most helpful tips you learned along the process?
Oh man. Job searching was fucking hard, yo. I'm not gonna lie. It was really, really hard. I realized that imposter syndrome, survivor's guilt, and like culture shock doesn't stop at graduation. Like that shit continued with me at Harvard, at my fellowship, where I'm at now. And it was really just like, again, it just woke me up, right? Things weren't as seamless. Like it wasn't like undergrad, fellowship, grad school, and then the next thing, it was like this gap, this emptiness. And it really was, reanalyzing my sense of worth, like reanalyzing how much of my identity is caught up in a job or in academia, all of these different things that, and really just guilt and shame kind of coexisting within each other in a negative way. I really had to learn to unpack that, while at the same time, like going home for the first time since I was 17, and the differences between that, between me and my parents and me and my siblings and me and my really rural community, which is like less than 1,000 people. So it was just a lot of different things happening at once. And I was told at Harvard, like, oh, you're at the most prestigious institution in the world, blah, 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 you're gonna get something. And I'm like, where is it? That being said, what was super helpful, everything that B mentioned, yes, 100%, I echo that. One of the things I would add would be, I learned that the ebbs and flow of my focus and motivation to apply like varied a lot. Like some weeks I'd be like, I'm at Starbucks 5 hours a day, I buy that one tea for $2 and like I'm going ham. And then other weeks I don't want to open my laptop, I don't want to look at the listservs, I don't want to look at another application. So being like gracious and forgiving of myself and understanding like, okay, being able to create attainable goals for myself without shaming myself because I didn't do this thing. And keep in mind, I couldn't 100% get myself to the job process because I'm around my family for the first time in like, I don't know how long. And I can't fully be around my family because I feel like I'm a failure to them because I don't have a job. Another thing that was really, really helpful when I learned about halfway through was talking to my mentors and mentors because they have more experience than I do. And more often than not, a lot of them went through a similar process as I did. So even though I was really hard on myself, even though I did take certain things personally, they reminded me, like, just because you didn't get this position doesn't equate to your worth. Like, all search committees will vary the evaluations based on context, based on institution type, based on position, based on their need, based on personnel. Like, all of that comes into play. So you can literally be the most accomplished or the most experienced candidate, but they won't choose you because of other factors that are really just not up to you. You know what I mean? Practicing interview questions with people was super helpful. Like I would talk to my different friends, both current students and current professionals or people who are like leadership positions, and I would send them a job position ahead of time, be like, hey, this is a job position. I wouldn't even send them questions. They would think of questions because they were grateful enough to do that for me. And I would sit there and just have like a 20-minute interview, and then they would provide feedback. So for me, going through the process was helpful for me to get away with the nerves and just really be myself. I saved everything between like all the cover letters that I wrote, all the resumes that I wrote, all the job descriptions that I was looking at, all of the short answers that I responded to, because you start realizing that a lot of these things, if you're applying to similar positions, sound the same. So I would still like change keywords to adjust to the job position, but I would save myself hella time rather than like doing everything all over again. And informational interviews were something I did not believe in, but that's essentially what got me my job. I never understood, like I didn't have the privilege of understanding what networks meant. You know what I'm saying? People are like, yeah, use network, talk to people to get you the insider scoop. I'm like, okay, but I don't know exactly what that means. How does that look like? What do I ask? How do I go about it? Am I able to ask certain questions about like, you know, how do they deal with racism or microaggressions? Or do I like use proxies for that? So that was difficult until I kept doing them, and you quickly realize like, you know, there's a difference between institutions or organizations talk about white privilege and white supremacy, just as an example. So doing information interviews are super helpful. And then once I did get into the job process, something that one of my mentors asked me or told me, which was super helpful, because like, you should negotiate your salary regardless. Like that's something that was super hard for me, just because I was raised to just take what they give you, because my parents don't have the agency to really negotiate their salaries my whole life. So now I'm expected to do it by myself, and I have an example. But please, please, please negotiate your salary. And what helped me was like, I wasn't negotiating for me, I was negotiating for them. And then I also like, what would a wealthy cis white male ask for? And I kept that mentality throughout the entire process and while I'm at my current job. So for example, at my current job, I have like a loaner laptop. I had my own office. And when we were teleworking, they're like, oh, what else do you need? And I was like, well, I mean, I have my laptop, right? I mean, that's all I really need. But I was like, nah, fuck that. Like, let me get a mouse, let me get a monitor, let me get an office chair. And they actually gave me a mouse, they gave me a monitor. Hopefully the office chair is coming in soon. And it's like, not all organizations are like this. I recognize like I'm in a very privileged position with a really dope Black director who understands these inequities, and we work with inequities. But with that being said, like, please, please, please advocate for yourself. And what helped me was actually talking it out with somebody, like asking for like, oh, you offered me, you know, 45,000. Well, I believe based on cost of living in Chicago, I deserve 62 plus 3,000 in moving costs. Because the worst thing they could say is no. And it was a really hard lesson for me to learn, but I was able to negotiate my salary. So yeah, those are a couple of things that I learned. Please, please, please negotiate y'all's salary. I cannot stress that enough.
Yeah, thank you so much. I do want to be mindful of the time. It is about 4:40, so I do want to open it up for the fellows. If fellows do have questions that you want answered or to address any one of our panelists or for both of them, you can go ahead and ask. If not, we do have a couple of more questions, but we did want to provide some space for you all to go ahead and get your your questions asked.
I have a quick question. Going back to that negotiating salary, do y'all think it's like the same when it's like a grant funded position and there's only like a certain amount of money?
My organization is a nonprofit, so they are grant funded. Again, different nonprofits, depending on the like sector that they're in, like their budgets vary. But I would still ask for it, because again, I kept thinking like, what would a rich cis white male do? And they would probably still ask for that money. And again, the way I looked at it, it was hard for me, and I literally had to like have multiple iterations of this via Zoom or via the phone with my mentor to be like, Jaime, just say it, like say, and I'm asking for this, and provide like reasons why. But I still did it. And again, for me, the way I looked at it was like the worst thing they could say is no. And they would say, because of our grant funding, we can't do this. Or because of like equity payment within that organization, like we can't pay you more than someone who's been there for 3 years already, right? But let them tell you that. Don't have yourself, take yourself out of position to ask for that. That's at least my opinion. I don't know if B would recommend.
I agree with you. I would say let them let you know what their limitations are, like Jaime said. Because I mean, the community college district, they don't have a lot of flexibility or any at all. But I know folks will still try, and it's okay. And I definitely support still doing it. But yeah, and if people are gonna go in not knowing, and that's okay. Let them let you know what the limitations are. It's a little bit of a different situation.
something I really like that Jaime gave an example too. Often, at least in my experience, there's a lot of pushback with like salaries, especially with grant funded positions, right? Because you're right, Alondra, that there's like some caps and not as much flexibility. Examples like mice, office chairs, right? There are things in your physical environment that definitely make a huge difference about how you show up to work. So thinking about those other things beyond just the monetary things, since those often come from different budgetary buckets and can be a lot more flexible. So that was an awesome example too.
I would also say with that, Erin, too, the moving costs that Jaime talked about, like those are a big deal too. You might not get a full blown like month to month like additional on top of whatever your salary you're being offered is, but moving costs can make or break folks, right? Especially if you have a gap in time between when you're gonna get your last paycheck at your current location, or maybe you have no paycheck that's coming in and you're entering into another position. So that's something to think about, especially if you're moving out of state or you living in a state as large as ours, where moving from the northern end to the southern end might actually be just like you're moving out of state in New England, right? And the other thing too is benefits. So thinking about your benefits and what are additional benefits you might be able to get, right? So maybe an organization offers some support with childcare, or maybe it's an organization that offers you benefits around like getting a gym membership or other things that are perks and stuff like that, that are maybe not monetary in terms of you're going to see them affect your annual salary, but they might be really helpful in taking some pressure off of your using your annual salary to compensate for other things.
Also, just to add on, I think a misconception is that folks always think that like relocation packages are usually for like higher admin or senior student affairs professionals. And I can speak from personal experience that I've seen universities and institutions, when they really want somebody for their campus, they'll move land and sea to get that person where whatever they have to do in order to bring them onto campus. But thank you so much for that question. Does anybody else have another question you want to ask?
I have a question. Can y'all hear me? Cool. So I'm really blessed and fortunate and excited because I got a job recently at an LGBT center at another university, which is really cool. But I think my biggest anxiety is like adjusting from being like in student affairs as a student and like working 12 hours a week and adjusting to that 40-hour work week. That's like not as broken up, I guess, as being a student and employee is. So I'm curious if y'all have advice on like how to kind of make that adjustment easier. I know it might be a little bit different since I know B, like you mentioned, you didn't right away transition into full-time work in higher ed. But if y'all have any advice for like kind of how to adjust better and how to take care of yourself during that time, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, I would definitely say boundaries will save you. I don't know. I feel like in higher ed, it's really easy to get stuck working like all these hours because you got to get something done. Like you have an event or you have something that like has a deadline. And I definitely think one of the most impactful and important things for me was my support system there, which took a while to like grow. But I think that reminding each other, hey, did you take your lunch? Hey, did you get a chance to eat? Like those go a really long way. Even if like definitely reminding myself or like making it a point to remind the person next to you eventually, like, or who you sit around with in the center, it becomes kind of like a culture that you create for yourself of reminding folks or, each other, like, did you eat? Did you get a chance to take a break? Have you gone out of your chair? Like all those things are super important. And, everyone is at a different place. I definitely know folks who just like want to work until like they just need to get stuff done and like they just want to finish so they could leave on time. And so I'm like, respectful of that. But definitely taking breaks is okay. I think I had a hard time with that too, of like that internalized imposter syndrome of like, oh, this other person doesn't take as frequent breaks. So like I can't either, like, I think it really helped to remind myself, like, it's okay to take breaks. Like, you're your own person, you're your own body, you have your own needs, like needs that are different. Like, yeah, yep, Michael said, use that vacation time, use your sick time. Mental health days are a thing. Like, you don't have to explain anything to anyone. I think it took me a while to learn that. Like, you don't have to, like, create this like long explanation of why you're taking a sick day. You just take it because you're entitled to it. It's okay. So that's yeah, my 2 cents.
Everything that B said, I think the only things I would add would be, I'm someone who likes to have different perspectives, and I use myself to filter through things. So asking people within the organization that I'm working at, be like, hey, like, how have you adjusted since you started? To kind of get the inside deets on what's going on. Then also learning like maybe some inside scoop details on different things that the organization does or different happenings that are going on throughout the workday. When I was a college advisor at high school, like high school students were constantly coming in all the time, where like my lunch was, eating while advising students all the time. So by putting that actually on my calendar and forcing myself to actually leave the space was really helpful. So what I would do, I would like get in my car, go down the street, get a mangonada, eat my whatever it was away from there, and then come back. Because more often than not, like even if students did come by to see me, they would come back again. Because my thing was like, oh, if I'm not here, students won't be able to see me, and that's a missed opportunity, and X, Y, and Z. The other thing too is like, I don't know, this was a really big shock for me, but I know it's in the policy space, which is different. Working from home, asking to work from home. I know for me, our organization, the culture is like, as long as you tell people ahead of time, like most of the time people worked from home like once a week. And a lot of that was for writing, a lot of that was for like documents. And I know as a college advisor, when I had a lot of data like to input within our database, I would tell my boss, be like, hey, I have a bunch of data coming up. I've been pretty stressed. Like on Friday, is it cool if I take like a half day at the school and then the other half I'm able to work from home? Just have that collaboration. Again, I don't know if all positions are like that or if they're able to be that flexible, but it's worth asking.
Thanks so much, y'all. That's really helpful.
I was also going to say, setting boundaries can be really hard. I think both Jaime and B brought up a lot of really, really good stuff. And so something that I try to suggest to people and something that I've tried to practice and learn from my own mentors is setting those expectations in your initial meeting with your supervisor. So building in like with that first meeting that you have, getting to know your supervisor and all that, talking about like, hey, here's what I need from a supervisor and here's what I'm expecting from you with regards to supporting me in maintaining these boundaries. I need to take my lunchtime. I need to take 30-minute breaks at this time. I need to be able to leave the office. And I also don't check my email after 5 o'clock. When I leave here, I don't do that. So making sure that your supervisor is on board and has signed off on that. And granted, you don't really need them to sign off on anything because you need to do you. That makes you a more productive human. But having that conversation and letting them in can make them one of your biggest allies and advocates in this process. And also asking them, like, what do you expect from me, right? How is this relationship going to be mutually beneficial? And how are we going to keep each other on track? Because sometimes having a supervisor who doesn't give you what you need can also come in the form of they're not communicating effectively with you or in the way that you need to be communicated with about projects that you are expected to work on or complete, right? So letting them know, and I can say from a supervisory standpoint, like this is the best thing for me when I know that the people that I'm supervising are getting what they need from me, right? So it's just something to think about.
If I can add to that, Sarah, I think one thing that took a while for me to realize, and then as a supervisor that I tried to get better about practicing, was asking the staff how to recognize them for great work. Because I used to make the assumption like, oh, I'm going to do a staff meeting with everybody. And some people were like, hey, that really embarrassed me. So I think letting them know what's the best way to recognize you for great work that you've done, and part of that initial conversation that Sarah's talking about is letting them know like, hey, here's in the past how it's been really great. When you want to share something, positive feedback, here's a place potentially to do that. If that makes sense.
I wanted to add, let me lower this hand real quick. In terms of time and breaks, depending on what position you're in, you'll know what your day-to-day looks like in terms of what breaks you need, and also like annually what that looks like, when your busy times are throughout the year. And so you'll want to make sure that you identify those and schedule in times where you can either take those mental health days or vacations. Like I know for me, mid-October, every fall is the time where I'm like, cool, I'm gonna take like a 4 or 5 day weekend and just recover because it's been really busy. So that's something I just wanted to add to the conversation.
One thing I just wanted to add along those same lines of what Panji just mentioned, also knowing what your job classification is, because there are legally mandated breaks depending on whether you are exempt or non-exempt. Something I very much did not know in my first position. I took no breaks and I was supposed to be taking breaks. And that was time that I got from my job. So knowing the difference between like, what does it mean to be exempt? What does it mean to be non-exempt, right? And when you're exempt, you have a lot more flexibility. So figuring out, I think Sarah said, you know, setting those expectations with your supervisors of saying like, I'm gonna come in when I come in, and when my work is done, I'm leaving, even if it's 3 o'clock, right? And I may check emails later, but just really being aware of what you really can do within your position, because often your supervisor won't be the one to bring it up to you to say like, hey, legally you need to be taking a break, or hey, your position is actually classified to be super flexible, so you should be taking advantage of those things.
Cool. It's about 4:51, so we have time maybe for 1 or 2 more questions if folks still have questions. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Tanya. I just wanted to ask, this is kind of very different because I'm in a different place where I'm trying to, you know, figure out grad school and all that, grad school and education. And I know, Jaime, you mentioned that you went to grad school. And so I just wanted to ask, like, how you navigated that when, like, my situation is kind of similar where I don't know anyone, like, in my family who went to grad school, and even less so people who went to education. And so it's really hard to kind of narrow the scope when everything online is like, oh, this is a great grad school. And I'm like, oh, like another great program. Like, I don't know what to apply to. And it's not like I have the funds to apply to every single school. And so I just want to know how that search was for you and how you managed to kind of narrow it down and see what was better for you.
I mean, my version of narrowing it down was still applying to 9 programs. So yeah, but in regards to the fees, I did reach out to all the offices and half of them provided fee waivers like right away. Like they didn't even ask for stuff. And other ones, like they just don't provide fee waivers. They're like, oh, you need to be Pell eligible, but I couldn't prove that because I wasn't a current student. But yeah, so please do reach out because you'll be surprised at how quickly these institutions are like, yeah, we'll waive your whatever, or go to this information in your like meeting or webinar and you'll get this thing waived. What helped me was trying to figure out what I wanted out of the program rather than what the program could give me. So I know like I wanted a comunidad, so cohort-based, it to be interdisciplinary, like not just theory, not just practice, but somewhere both. Somewhere where it valued like internships or provided flexibility for me to like actually work while also doing the program. Having faculty of color that, or faculty in general that were interested in equity issues or interested in, at the time I was interested in holistic success strategies for men of color. So looking at professors, if they have that interest, for me to potentially have mentorship or mentorship with them, in addition to like researching all of the websites, but then reaching out and be like, hey, can I talk to an alumni? And when I would talk to that alumni, I'd be like, okay, this is everything I know on the website, but now tell me the real thing beyond the website, beyond the pamphlets. Because to me, all the programs look great beyond that. Once I like got that set of programs, I kind of went to my trusted mentors or mentors within higher education that were within the scopes that I was interested in, and I kind of had them provide feedback. So an example is within 2 days, I gave it to like Doctora Mendez, who works at like the Chilat Center, and she recommended that I apply to UCLA and Harvard. Within the next day, I showed it to somebody else who was in policy, and they recommended the same thing. So without their help and without their letters and without their insight, like I would have never applied to the program that I actually ended up going to. So that's kind of some advice that I would do is like sit down, figure out what you want out of the program or what structures work best for you, and then trying to see which programs like may benefit. In addition, Christy or Michael or anybody else, I do have like some programs require GREs and some don't. So some of mine did, so I took mine. And I was able, luckily through my comunidad, I was able to curate like a bunch of online PDF, like GRE prep books, GRE practice tests, a whole bunch of stuff. So if y'all reach out to me, I have all of that on a Google Drive, separated out by like Manhattan, ETS, so Princeton. Reach out to me so then I can send that to y'all. And then y'all, if y'all are interested in grad school, interested, and you need to apply to the, or need to take the GRE, y'all can have access to free stuff. It might be a little outdated by now, but I mean, it's better than nothing.
Thank you.
Yay. So we still have maybe time for one last question. If somebody has like a burning question they would like to ask. The window of opportunity, and we're closing it, and we're closing it. Last minute, people, we're closing, and it's done. Yay. Well, on behalf of the UC Davis NUF committee and the NUF program, we want to thank you both for agreeing to take some of your afternoon and being with us today. Like we've mentioned before, once you're part of the UC Davis NUF program, your family here, always, in the future, forever. So thank you so much for joining us. And I don't know how to do a round of applause, but we're doing a round of applause.
Yay, thank you.
Thank you for having us, y'all.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. And for our current fellows, if you didn't realize, like, we still have really good relationships with our fellows who have left us for several years now, you know, like I am chatting with Jaime on Instagram, like almost weekly. And I know B and Sarah have a really close relationship. So we, yes, we stay in touch. And again, like, these are your networks, right? Like we've said this from the beginning, that this is your student affairs network. As you all continue moving through your careers, through your education, you all are going to be the ones to reach out to each other and be like, yo, I think I remember you work at this other like spot. What's the deal? You know, give me the ropes on this. And we're also here to help you through all of that. So the comment section also has a lot of really, really great words, resources, affirmations. We'll save the chat and we'll include it in with the recording and everything. And those will be things that you all can access. We are still here all the time. This is our last workshop for now. So I appreciate Aaron and Michael taking the lead on all of this. And then maybe over the summer, we'll be able to do some things if you all are still interested. But other than that, end of the year celebration, let us know. Oh, wait, let's take a picture for the Instagram. Yes, please, let's take a picture for the Instagram. I'm gonna stop recording.
I was also gonna say, we do have a graduate school search like presentation. And Tanya, I think that you were out the quarter that we did it. So that could be really helpful for you. So we'll make sure to send out some of that information again for those of you who are embarking on that search. Also, Joel, as soon as you're settled a year in, we're going to start sending people your way. So just beware of that.
Sounds good.
And I think it's really important. I just want to reiterate, Chrissy brings up a really good point. Like, we still have really great relationships with alum and folks that have been involved in the program. I just want you to know I'm the first at UCSB in the NUF program there. And I still get tapped now years down the line. And we're talking like I'm 10 years out. More than 10 years out from graduating. So we are going to tap you at some point. Just, it's coming. So just be aware of that. We won't take no for an answer. And we want you to continue to talk to us. Like, if you decide now that you're going to take a break and you're going to do grad school like 2 years down the line, we're still here to support you in navigating that. So you could still probably reach out to Jaime and get advice. I'm sure B, as soon as B decides whether or not they're going to end up going to graduate school, if they decide to do that, I'm sure we'll be getting some phone calls as well. So just note that we're not going to say no to you, and our doors are never closed once you graduate and do the things. So.
And if you don't tell us, we'll find out.
Yeah, Tavares. We are going to find out if we're going to grad school or not.
Yeah. I'm just saying, Tavares, you know.
Man.
Wow.
Call us out, Tavares.
Wow. In front of everybody.
I know, right?
So bitter.
Please.
I may be reaching out to you via email. I currently work in EOP and work with the PACs, and we got 2 folks on here right now who are either worked as PACs as well. So I'll be reaching out.
Hey, what's up? Yeah, PCs all the way. It's people to reach out. And again, I try to keep my answers short about grad school. That was a whole process in itself. It was like applying to undergrad all over again, except it's like different shit that comes up. So feel free to share my information. I'm more than happy to talk more extensively. And I did have like Excel sheets to kind of map out like the name of the program, the link, the professors, whether it covered certain things and so forth and so forth. So stuff to help me centralize a lot of information. I'm more than happy to share that.
Hey, Chrissy, are we going to try to do like the hearts?
No.
Oh my gosh, no. Let's just all combine on the count of whatever.
I'm over it now. I can't. I'm gonna stop recording though.